The highest performing B2B companies in 2026 are not winning on product. They're not winning on price, and they're definitely not winning on features. They're winning on something most sales organizations completely ignore, and it's the same thing your buyers are evaluating before they ever get on a call with you. If you're in B2B sales and you don't understand what I'm about to share, you're already behind, so let me explain. Something fundamental has changed in how B2B buyers make decisions, and most sales teams have not caught up yet. 5 years ago, if you had the best product and a compelling demo, you had a real shot at winning the deal. The product spoke for itself. Buyers evaluated features, compared capabilities, they ran a pilot and chose a solution that performed best. But that world is disappearing. Today, product parity is the norm. Almost every B2B category, think of CRM, cybersecurity, data analytics, cloud infrastructure, HR tech, the top 5 solutions can all do the job. The functional differences are marginal, and buyers know this. So how do they decide? They will decide based on trust. And trust in 2026 is a brand problem, not a sales problem. I heard of a mid-sized cybersecurity company. They had great technical product, great engineering teams, good pricing, and they kept losing deal to a competitor that had the product that was less sophisticated. And when they interviewed the buyers that chose a competitor, the reason was always some variation of, we just felt more confident in them. Not the product, them, the company, the brand, the feeling that this was a safe, credible choice. And that brand in B2B has become the most underinvested competitive advantage. Let me explain you why this shift has happened, because understanding that will help you respond strategically. There is a lot of research that shows that B2B buyers are 60 to 70% through their decision process before they ever talk to a salesperson. They've read your content, they've checked your LinkedIn presence, they looked at what your executive post, they ask AI for advice, they've asked peers in their network, and by the time you get on a discovery call, they already have an impression. And that impression, that's your brand. If your brand says credible, strategic, trustworthy, the call starts from a position of strength. If your brand says another vendor trying to get a meeting, you're fighting uphill from the first minute. And the higher the deal value, the more this matters. When a VP or a C-suite executive is looking at 500K purchase, they're not just buying a product, they're making a career decision. And if it goes wrong, their credibility takes a hit. So they default to brands that feel safe. And brands with a visible point of view. Brands whose leaders show up in the places they pay attention to. Industry events, LinkedIn, podcast, publications. I worked with a seller that was always losing to a competitor that had a smaller product team and a higher pricing. The difference was that the competitor's CEO published Thought Leadership Weekly. Their VP of product spoke at 3 major conferences a year. Their content showed up in every relevant industry conversation. And so the buyer's internal champion could walk into a leadership meeting and say, you've probably seen their CEO's post on the future of this space. That brand's doing the selling before the seller ever shows up. And there's an old saying in enterprise tech, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM or Microsoft. And that principle has not changed. But who qualifies as the safe choice has. It's no longer just the biggest company. It's a company with the most visible, credible, consistent presence in the market. The one that feels like it understands the buyer's world. The one whose perspective the buyer has been consuming for months before the sales process began. And that's a brand advantage. And it's one that most B2B companies, especially in the mid-market, are leaving to their marketing team, while it should be a strategic priority for the entire revenue organization. So, how does this look like in practice? Let me share 3 things that the B2B companies winning on brand in 2026 are doing that their competitors are not. Their sellers have a personal brand, not just a company brand. The most effective B2B sellers I work with don't just represent their company. They have their own voice, their own perspective, their own presence. They post on LinkedIn, not corporate content, real insights from their work. They share what they're learning. They comment thoughtfully on industry conversation. And they build a reputation as someone worth talking to. And that does something powerful. It shifts the buyer's perception from I'm being sold to I'm learning from someone who understands my world. And that's a completely different dynamic, and it changes the entire sales conversation. There was this account executive that started sharing posts about what she saw in enterprise procurement. And within 6 months, prospects were reaching out to her, not responding to her outreach, but they were initiating conversation because she built a personal brand that signaled expertise and trustworthiness. 2. They lead with a point of view and not a product. So winning B2B brands in 2026 don't lead with, here's what our product does. They will tell you, here's what we believe about your industry. And that's a huge shift. Instead of positioning as a vendor, they position it as a perspective. They take a stand on where the market is going. And they challenge conventional thinking. They give a worldview that resonates with their ideal buyer. It could look like publishing a series on the future of their buyer's industry, the trends, the challenges, the strategic shifts, and not mentioning your product once. And what it does, it drives more inbound pipeline because buyers will associate you with strategic insight and not just a product. Your product is what you sell, but your point of view is why people buy from you. And third, they make the champion's job easier. Here's something that most sellers forget. Your champion has to sell internally. They have to walk into rooms you'll never be in and make the case for your solution to people you'll never meet. And the best B2B brands create content and materials that make that internal selling effortless. And not product brochures. Strategic content, industry perspectives, frameworks. That's the kind of material your champion can forward to their CFO and say, this is why it matters. When your brand prioritizes content that is valuable to executives, it's not promotional but intellectually useful, your champion doesn't have to convince people to pay attention to you. Your brand has already done that work. And you have companies like Salesforce that create quarterly state of the industry reports. Couple of pages, no product mention, pure insights. And what it does, it helps the champion share that internally before the deals even start. And by the time the sales team comes in, the buying committee has already saw them as a credible voice in the space. And that's brand as a sales accelerator. So here's the bottom line. In 2026, the B2B companies that win are not the ones with the best product. They're the one that buyers already trust before the first call happens. Brand is not a marketing exercise. It's a revenue strategy. And if you're in B2B sales and you're not thinking about how you show up personally and organizationally before the sales process begins, you're leaving deals on the table. So start with this. What is the one thing you believe about your buyer's world that your competitors are not saying? That's your point of view. And that's where your brand starts. So if this was useful, subscribe. I talk about the strategic side of B2B selling every week, the part that most sales training never covers. And I'd love to hear your take. So what B2B brand do you trust more and why? Just drop it in the comments.